there is contemplate. So let's start with an intros. Today, I'm not going to read this. I'll let you guys, read the text. But without further ado, we're going to introduce Chris Fago. And he comes to us from Zenity. And so in this age of leveraging AI to either be as a code companion or develop a low-code platform, there's obviously a lot of risks that you may or may not have heard about. Today, we're going to hear a little bit about how AppSec teams can adapt to build software securely with some of these AI, driven capabilities. For the last thing I'll mention as well, if you're interested in joining OWASP and just kind of following our month-to-month activities, please go to the meetup. You can go to the meetup, this site right here. Let me put this guy up. This is where we have a lot of the announcements. You can join, you can see where the locations are. If you're not able to make it like today, we have Zoom announcements as well. On the socials, we got the OWASP group. You can go to OWASP Atlanta, go to LinkedIn groups, or you can just simply take a note of the chat that I made in Zoom and make a note and join today. It is actually open invite. It's not being moderated in terms of invites. There's some conditions that apply depending on your profile, but please continue to follow us there. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Chris, you should hopefully have sharing rights. Yes, I will start sharing. Too many windows on it. It's a little lost. So I'm not set. Okay, let me just close the. Should have been doing time on. All right, hey everybody, can everybody hear me? Am I too loud? Can the audience online tell me if I'm too loud, if I need to be louder?
Perfect.
Crystal? Crystal, yeah. He wasn't Crystal, but as long as I'm Crystal, awesome, sweet. So as Tony mentioned, my name is Chris Fago, and I come to you all live and online from Zenity. Zenity is a application security platform for securing AI agents. So the goal for tonight is to kind of walk through what's going on in the world of AI agents. What is an agent? How do you secure an agent? So we'll cover a couple different topics. I'm going to keep it high level, so we'll just dive in. Awesome. So as I mentioned, why do I feel like I have any credibility, and why would I make my first OWASP meeting a talk? I've been with Zenity for almost 7 months now, and I've been in cloud security for 7 years before that. On the Zenity front, we have a labs arm, so we have an entirely amazing research arm, and that's really where we do all of our thought leadership and all of our red team exercises. So I'm not going to read everything on here, but at the end of the day, I think the takeaways to think about is how do we bridge security with business innovation, regardless of what you use to do that. It's something you have to do, so that'll be something we'll cover. And then understanding there are plenty of amazing researchers out there and open source tools at your disposal. So what are we going to get into tonight? What can you expect? We have 3 categories, and then I put together a very comprehensive additional resources section so that you can learn way more than I can teach you about this topic. So we have a couple different things we're going to dive into. First, we're going to talk about how agentic AI is here for the business. Then we'll talk about how it's here for business users and how it's here for you to secure. Now, always remember, safety first, right? I thought this image was pretty topical. The machine has no brain, use your own. That's what AI is. It is not something that you can trust. They tell you on the front page of ChatGPT to proceed with caution that it makes mistakes. So it's a high-level introduction. Agentic AI changes every day. Securing agentic AI changes with it. And most importantly, have fun and do your research. So agentic AI is here for business.
Well, I don't really feel like saying agentic for the next hour because it's such a big word. So AI agents are here for business. So what does that mean, and why does your company care about this? And why is it unavoidable? So what is an agent? That's where we'll start. It's not Agent Smith, and it's not Tom Cruise's Jerry Maguire. So this is an AI agent. We'll kind of break through the anatomy here. I know it might be hard to see for those here. It's a little washed out, but what I'll describe here, it's over here on the left, we have our tech support agent. And what makes this an agent, if I click through this, there's our tech support agent. Here we have given it access to knowledge. So this is a CSV file for a customer success manager's top 20 accounts. And in addition to that, we've given it the ability to take action. So it can get, and you can use information from Salesforce. And then the last part of the agent that is important is the trigger. So you can see here, it says when a new email arrives, trigger it. So this is what an agent is. This guy, Chris up here, another Chris with a K, different guy. He created this agent so that if his customers have support issues, he can kind of offload some of that information. So why do your companies, and why do any companies care about AI agents? At the end of the day, money talks. So I put this together because I thought going over the landscape from a security perspective was obviously the goal, but it was key to be able to set the table. So when you think about it, the big number at the very end over here is $200 billion. And that is the predicted market size for agentic AI by 2034. So very, very close amount of time. And it's going to compound at a growth rate of 43%. And they think it's going to impact our economy by $19 trillion. And I thought the most important thing I learned putting this talk together was the ROI. So $4.60 per every dollar your company invests in AI. That's pretty good return. So I think you can kind of see why, CIOs and board kind of push it AI. It is a train that's coming down the tracks, and it's not something that you can opt out of. And it's all brought to you by the usual suspects. So, Gartner named agentic AI the top tech trend for 2025. And right behind it in number 2 was AI governance tools. So they go hand in hand, but the people that are driving this train are the usual suspects. So we have Microsoft, everyone knows about Copilot. We have Salesforce, which launched Agentforce in the fall with all those wonderful Matthew McConaughey commercials. But there's other business productivity suites that I didn't know about until I was doing this research. So we have Workday, ServiceNow, Oracle, SAP, and then you have the other, usual suspects on the cloud service provider side of the house. So AWS, Azure, Google, they all have their own flavor of agentic AI. So these are all vendors that your companies are already using, and these are all going to be features that are unavoidable. I met with an organization here in Atlanta recently, and they said they had ServiceNow and they weren't using the agent function, but that they had a very old instance of ServiceNow and they were already getting pressed by their sales rep to, pay more for the agent version. So what are you paying for? These are some of the claims that you'll find when it comes to the benefits and outcomes of adopting AI agents. So there's 4 categories. These are important because we're going to map up to these here in a couple of minutes. So we have operational efficiency, right? So automation and streamlined workflows across the entire enterprise. From a productivity perspective, improvements in task completion, workflow efficiency, customer experience. So enhancing that customer satisfaction. Remember, the agent I showed you was a customer success manager's tech support agent. That means that when he gets that email, it triggers that response, which is probably going to be faster than a human can respond because it'll be 24/7, 365. And then lastly, the financial impact. 15% higher market share for AI adopters for publicly traded companies. And then 20% higher user trust for companies using an ethical AI framework. So there are a lot of different benefits and outcomes. I think what you'll see here is, do they live up to the expectation? And that brings us to AI agents are here for business users. So this is the AI we were all warned about, Skynet and, the T-800, T-1000 Terminators. World's gonna end, they're gonna take over. Unfortunately, this is the AI, AppSec, and security teams we're given. Regular business users and everyday idiots like me. But that's the best part about all this. So I am joking, kind of. So let's talk a little bit about what I mean by that. So everyone's using an agent. So I have this gentleman, give him a name, give him a department. We'll name him Jim. We'll say he's in sales. And when we think about how everyone is using AI agents, they first start with two various locations. They start with a channel and an assistant. So in the instance we showed before, we had connected to Salesforce as the channel. And the email was also part of that. Most of you are probably familiar with Copilot as like mostly as the most widely used AI assistant, but it is not an agent. It is just an assistant. It doesn't become an agent till you give it access to knowledge. So this knowledge can be anything you can think of. It could be your email, your calendar, any file in Google Drive. This is where it gets its brain. Because right now, if you just use Copilot, that AI assistant is using OpenAI's LLM and ultimately is just doing predictive text. It's trying to say, Chris put in a prompt, what should the response be based on prompt and the next thing that I'm going to say after that. But once I give it knowledge, it becomes uniquely mine. And the agentic powers come from actions. Now, in the lead up to this, Tony mentioned AI agents and low-code applications. And I'm not going to dive too far into low-code. That is a world of its own. But I think the most important thing to stress here is that you can't have agents without low-code, because the way you build an agent is going to be through a low-code platform. So whether it's Agentforce, which builds Einstein agents, Copilot Studio, which builds Microsoft Copilot agents, or any other type of agent builder, they're all done via low-code. Because again, we are building these agents. They're built by everyday people. They're not built by professional developers. There is no SDLC. They're just regular people. And so that's kind of where we're at here. I think I covered most of this. When you think about building an agent, it's the same premise as using it, but instead of taking something off the shelf, or maybe a colleague built it and shared with you, you're building your own through those low-code platforms. So we talked a little bit about the benefits that were being promised by these big vendors. And now we're here. I mapped out the success stories. I'm not going to share them all, but I will share just a couple fun facts. So with Access Holdings, they, from an operational efficiency standpoint, they use Microsoft Copilot, and they embedded Copilot into their daily workflows across 18 countries, and their software developers saved 75% of their day. So they went from 8 hours to 2 hours. And when we look at Wiley from a customer experience perspective, they're a publisher. They used Agentforce. They had high volume of tech support queries and pretty bad knowledge management. So they deployed Agentforce. They saw a 40% improvement in self-service resolution rates, and they automated knowledge-based article generation. So anytime you go to a website now, it's mostly going to start with AI chatbot. It's frustrating sometimes because you want to get to a human, but at the end of the day, it's going to start there because they're always going to try and solve the first pass through with AI now. And then the last two, productivity. So we have Fujitsu, everyone knows who that is. They saw a 67% increase in productivity across 35,000 employees. So their outcome is way higher than what they were promised. I believe it was like 35 to 40% on that slide. And they really were doing it, they did it in a different way. They used Azure AI Agent Services. Lastly, we have British Telecom. They use ServiceNow. Their challenge was really high incident resolution costs and compliance issues. So they cut the resolution time from 45 minutes to 50 seconds. And that is it also resulted in a 55% reduction in compliance documentation. So I say all that before we get into the security aspect. This is here. Agents are here. Your organizations are very excited if they can get these kind of results. Your customers, the users of your products will be very excited. as well. It has benefits and it is seeing real dividends. So to sum it up, there's three ways you can build and use an agent. And this is kind of the framework. You can either build custom standalone agents with low-code tools like Copilot Studio or Agentforce. You can build extensions and plugins to and from AI assistants. So you can connect Copilot 365 to Copilot Studio or Power Automate or Power Apps in the Power Platform suite. And then lastly, let's all figure out how to use agents to get more done so we have more time on our hands to have fun. So let's talk about what that means for AppSec and really the meat of the conversation today. So AI agents, like I said, they're here to stay and they're here for you to secure. But this is not unfamiliar territory. We've all been here before. So like I mentioned in the lead up, I previously worked for a cloud security company. And when I think about the connective tissue between agents and the cloud, it's very, very familiar for me. That's why I got into this space. At the dawn of AWS, everybody was like, all right, we're leaving the data center. We're going to the cloud, diving in head first. A lot of organizations did not consider, they didn't ask if they should. They just asked if they could, and they did. And so they acquired a lot of security debt, a lot of tech debt. They went, multi-cloud. They kind of overdid it. And now I think you're starting to see companies kind of rein it in and reduce the number of cloud providers they use. And then we went through that again with containers. Containers became massively popular, and everyone had to figure out what's a container, what's a Kubernetes, how do we secure it at runtime? And that really brought us DevSecOps and Shift Left, which became this whole entire universe of SCA, IAC, all the different types of code scanning, and how do you go from code to cloud? And that's why AI is not really something you guys should be too worried about from an AppSec perspective. It's familiar, but a little different. So what that means to me and what my perspective is, comparing my experience helping organizations in cloud security, and then today is, these are really the three pillars of foundational security. Inventory, you always got to know what you have, who has access to it, what does it have access to, how's it being used, what could go wrong, what is going wrong, what's actually happening. That's really the genesis here. From a best practice standpoint, I think what's interesting is a lot of the times it's so new that we're really laying the pavement as we're driving. So Tony mentioned that there was an OWASP report released yesterday, I believe, and it's the first in a series on agentic AI threats and mitigation, or threats and challenges. So I linked that in the additional resources section. But like I said, it's been around for 24 hours. So every day there's like a new maturation and progression of best practices to follow. It's not all familiar. There are some new risks. So remember that agent we looked at before? Everyone remembers what we talked about. Wonderful tech support agent that Chris is using to save some time and help its customers. Well, we talked about how it has knowledge. We talked about how it can take action on his behalf. And we talked about how it can be triggered without his interaction. So Chris doesn't have to do anything. What's wrong with this agent? Why is this insecure? Why is this risky? Well, because it is viewable by public access. So it's open to the whole world. And this is not uncommon. This is something that happens when we go back and we think about the business users. Chris is not well-versed in security controls. He is not a developer. He just wants to reply to his customers quickly when they have a tech support issues. They want to take that time, 45 minutes to 50 seconds. And so oftentimes there's a lot of checkboxes in these tools where you build agents, and you're putting a lot of pressure and expectation on your business users to know what they're doing from a security best practices standpoint. So there's two things we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about how do we protect the users from AI, how do we protect AI from the user. So key things to think about when we protect the user from AI, we have hallucinations, we have data hygiene, credential sharing, and then the big bad prompt injection. So when you think about hallucinations, we're all familiar about this. This is where you go on any AI tool now, you can ask it a question. Luckily, they've gotten better because they now have access to like search and the internet. But I remember one of the first times I used ChatGPT, I asked it for quotes from CISOs at some of my accounts. And it provided me with all these links that 404 because they were not real quotes and they were not real links and they were never said by those people. And it's a good thing that I checked the links because I would have otherwise just taken AI at its word and trusted that it was accurate information. From a data hygiene perspective, this can boil down into 3 areas, and I think this is really important. One is like, from a data labeling perspective, most of the people I talk to today, that's the biggest project on their list when it comes to being able to adopt AI. AI inherently doesn't know what sensitive files are. It just, you give it access to the knowledge and it uses the knowledge. So if you have given it access to CSV that has customer financial data in it, it's not going to know not to leak out that that PII or that PCI information. But the other two are tied together in a way that I experienced, which is static knowledge resources. So the knowledge is typically static. If I go back to that agent, we've attached a CSV for customer success accounts. Well, if there's a new account that needs to be added, you have to replace that knowledge source. And if you don't, they won't be on the list. And that can result in outdated policies. So in this example, let's say I'm building an agent and it's a T&E agent, so travel and expense agent, and we update our travel and expense policy. Well, if I keep relying on that agent, maybe it says I can spend $500 a night in a hotel, but then they change it to 300. If I use that agent to say, what's our hotel policy right now? Tells me 500. I book a hotel for 500. Now I'm in HR jail, right? So the data hygiene is super important. And then, lastly, before we dive into prompt injection, is credential sharing. So we talked about that a little bit with the ability to create an agent that's open to the public internet. Another way to think about this is if I create an agent that requires my credentials, I can literally build it so that it uses my credentials every time instead of asking for your credentials. And that's a very simple mistake to make because in order for it to work for me, it needs my credentials. But if I share it with you, you could do all sorts of malicious things. And, if they trace it back, they look at the audit, the audit logs. It looks like my credentials were used to do bad things when really it was just the agent that I shared that was connected to my credentials. So a lot of important nuances when we think about business users building these agents from a security perspective. And then when we think about indirect prompt injection. Prompt injection is probably the thing you're going to hear the most when it comes to AI security risks. There are 2 types, they're indirect and direct. So we'll talk about indirect next. So a good example of an indirect prompt injection is hidden instructions in documents, emails, calendar invites. I have a video we're going to show up to this that'll show you that. The crazy thing about it is this is invisible to the user and to the agent itself. So the agent doesn't even know that it's being used to do these attacks. And once the agents are leveraged, or once they're compromised, they can essentially leverage all the trust that they have with you as the user. They can, compromise all the data that they have, and they can do, anything from data exfiltration to phishing. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to grab some water and I'm going to play this video.
Chris is a member of Zontoso Enterprises on the finance team, and he has access to, among other resources, a financial info SharePoint site with some sensitive documents. Let's look at the vendors document, and inside we can see there's basic information about vendor names, bank details, contact information. Let's note the TechCorp Solutions Bank of America account number and remember that for later. Because Chris is aware of the latest trends, he's using Copilot to help speed up his workflows and make sure that he doesn't have to remember exactly where that vendor's document is and bookmark it. You can just ask Copilot the information he wants to know. In this case, the bank details of TechCorp Solutions. And we'll see Copilot is looking through some relevant documents, and it's going to come up with the correct answer, the Bank of America account, starting with 711. And we can see that there's a reference to that vendor's sheet so that the user can know that it's a trusted, true result. Now, if we go over to the attacking perspective here, we're going to be Tamir for a few minutes. And Tamir's going to go ahead and send Chris an email. Important to note that Tamir could be an external attacker or a malicious insider. It does not matter for this use case. So Tamir is going to send a very plain and innocent looking email. Nothing in this email is going to be flagged by something like an email security system, for example. And we're going to embed a payload in here that is malicious. We're going to choose to do that, or Tamir, I should say, is going to choose to do that in a pretty basic way by adding a new non-rendered div element to the HTML. There are some other ways that would be a little bit more sophisticated, but this will serve our purposes. And taking a look, there are a lot of interesting symbols and specific things we've got to do inside here, but the basic idea is that once we prompt inject, we can provide our own attacker-controlled account number and bank details. So Tamir is going to insert the exploit text there simply, and he's going to go ahead and send the email to Chris. Now that that email is sent, we're going to be Chris again for a moment. And we'll see that when Chris goes to check his inbox in a second, he's going to see the email from Tamir. It's important to note that Chris doesn't actually have to open this email. This email could go to spam. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's being indexed by Copilot. And you can see that if Chris does open it, he's not going to see anything suspicious. But sadly, it's too late. Now, when Chris asks again, a second time, what the bank details of TechCorp Solutions are, he's going to be met with a clearly incorrect answer, but one that was controlled by the attacker. Crucially important is that the reference to where this data was found looks exactly like the trusted source that Chris is expecting.
So everyone saw what happened there. When I saw that, it was terrifying. Mainly the part about not having to open the email at all. Because if you think about it, there's a great debate happening. I saw it on, most recently, I saw it on LinkedIn. Nikesh Arora, CEO of Palo Alto Networks, said that users have some responsibility as AI users. I would argue that I don't have any responsibility if I don't open the email. But at the end of the day, that's really where the threat lies, is the fact that you can hide instructions within email headers. You can hide them in calendar invites. The way to do an indirect prompt injection like that is pretty wild. And I saw that in August, and that's why I joined Identity, because I didn't realize that was possible, and I realized how big of a threat vector this would become. Prompt injection will always be a cat and mouse game, but that one is something that really stood out.
Chris is a member of Zontoso Enterprises on the finance team, and he has.
I got a beach ball, Tony.
You got a beach ball?
Yeah, my computer's deciding to not cooperate right now. Oh wow, we went way too far. All right, we're gonna fix all this. Okay. So we talked about how we protect the user from AI. We had hallucinations. We had static data. We did hygiene issues. We had direct prompt injections. We had credential sharing. Right. Now we have to figure out how to protect the AI from the user. Similar rules apply. just a little different, right? So inputting sensitive data or connecting to sensitive knowledge resources. So if I willingly build an agent that has sensitive information, or I share sensitive customer information or sensitive, I think on the developmental side, this was obviously a hot topic right when ChatGPT came out, was sharing proprietary code, trying to do the coding with AI is still giving intellectual property away, even if it helps you with your job. So users are obviously not helping when it comes to how we protect what the AI is capable of. I thought this stat was pretty interesting. And it's interesting when you see the risks and some of the challenges that organizations are facing when you couple it with actual stats. So that we looked at all those wonderful success stories, but right now, 90% of business critical documents are shared beyond the C-suite. So that's when people joke about, oh, don't use Copilot, or don't use agents because you can ask what your CEO's salary is and it'll tell you. Sometimes that's true, but that's not the agent's fault. That isn't really a new problem at all. That's just data security issue that's existed since data security became, a thing. So I think really that's the goal here on the sensitive data leakage, is to understand that you are in the driver's seat for the things you input, and that the agent can amplify the risk by spreading that data across multiple tools, appending that sensitive data to new outputs. And as we saw with the agent I had built, it can operate autonomously by triggers. We talked about indirect prompt injection. Now we'll talk about direct prompt injection. This is where you're going to see compromised agents, mostly from an insider threat perspective. Denial of wallet can't happen. Denial of wallet, it is what it sounds like. So, running up the bill that your agents are, using. Advanced recon can be done through direct prompt injection. For instance, if there's an open Copilot Studio bot, you can then, ask it, well, what knowledge do you have? Who was the last person that chatted with it? I've seen this be done where I've seen HR copilots that are publicly accessible, and I'm not, here to tell you what is or what isn't serious. I was able to see, or not I, but they were able to find that the Copilot bot, the Copilot agent would reveal their severance policies, their raise policies. Again, I don't know if that's, mission critical information, but it might not be information you want just in the public. And it shows that it was set up by HR, and that even something as minute as that data is, probably something you don't want people digging through. So we think about direct prompt injection. I would say the biggest one is insider threat. And that's where you have, an agent is given legitimate instructions, and a malicious prompt is used to silently compromise the user's identity. And once they take that identity, it's very similar to how that email example worked, in which the user doesn't know that their identity has been compromised, and the agent is now just going to act on their behalf and kind of move about the cabin. Final thoughts. Prompt injection is not the end game. It'll always be a cat and mouse game. I had a conversation earlier today. It was all about prompt injection, and I literally had to talk about this. I did not use this slide, but I wanted to really badly because they were only focused on prompt injection and prompt analysis. And you have to kind of go beyond those things. You have to rely on, the tools of monitoring and responding, understanding the entire inventory landscape of AI in your organization, and understand what to do if AI deviates from its intended behavior or security guardrails, as well as the designed outputs. So I put those here. I won't go through all of them, but I thought it might be helpful. You had a high-level overview, 8 pillars of AI agent security. I think probably the most important thing that is on here we haven't covered is, if these agents deviate from the expected behavior, you got to escalate to SOC and IR. And I know that's a normal path for most things, but it's interesting how many conversations are being had about who owns AI agent security. Is it identity and access management because of the users? Is it data security because of the knowledge? Is it GRC? There are also AI committees, new AI committees, new AI security people. So we have AppSec because agents are essentially self-contained apps. It's hard to know how every organization will decide what to do with it, but I think the SOC team is usually left out of that conversation. And that is something that has to change. So when you think about inputs, outputs, appropriate behavior, if it deviates from that, escalate to the SOC, and that's going to require you to build responsive measures around agentic threats. And I would say like the last two are pretty important and probably my favorite. You got to work with your business users and Gartner calls them citizen developers. At the end of the day, there are people that are going to be building really powerful agents in your organization, and you wouldn't invite these people to, a barbecue or a happy hour. But they're going to have access to these really powerful tools. And these tools, as we kind of look through the financial side and the benefit side for the business, these tools are here whether you like it or not. And it's our job as security professionals to work with the business, foster a culture of responsible AI use, and figure out the best way to minimize the overall attack surface. So without further ado, I did put together, like I said, a very expansive resource because I'm just a sales guy and I want you to learn. So I broke it down into security guidance and threat mitigation. So right at the top, I got OWASP Top 10 for LLM and Generative AI project. That came out this week, so really excited about that. We have our own open source Gen AI attacks matrix I included and some other things. I got NIST, I got Gartner. Next, we have technical frameworks, best practices, and implementation blueprints. These are just, like I said, it is an exhaustive compendium because there's so much happening in AI agents every day. I keep track of it. I post AI agent news every afternoon because I can't even keep up. So, and then the last one is enterprise transformation, market impact, and business trends. You can't have one without the other, and I think that's important. I know OWASP is traditionally not focused on this side of the house, but I think it's important to understand where this is coming from and what's driving it in your organization. So that is all I have for tonight. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I'm happy to answer them via email.
It's Fago, everybody. You get online with questions. I know we have some people that still are sticking around online. So any questions from some of the virtual Zoom participants? You can text them out. You can vocalize them. All right. What about here in the room? We got a good contingency of OWASP, but yeah.
I know you talked about security measures for it. Like, what would be an incident response measure for that? Like, if you had Copilot per se.
So I think in a very simple example would be if we go back, actually, how did I go back to that agent? I think it'll be easier if I. So if you go. Okay. So if we think about this agent, right? This is that tech support agent. Everything's good about it until we realize that it has public access. So what you can do, and I think I'm actually in this situation right now, is if I go to build a Copilot Studio bot, just like this, agent, bot, I keep getting them mixed up in my head. If I go to build this agent, my organization does, well, one, it doesn't let me have triggers, right? Two, I cannot set things to public access. And three, I cannot have it use my credentials every time. And I can show you what that looks like. Even though I don't have permission, I can show you what that looks like. And I think that'll be really important. And I think all right, here we go. Let's see if it makes me log back in. Share screen. So here's Copilot Studio. Here I go homepage, so I can use natural language to build an agent. I can just build an agent. So I can just come here and I can just go to agent, I can just get create. Now I'm creating this new agent. So what you asked about is actually really interesting because if we just go, let's just get through this. It already exists. We'll just do OAuth. All right, create. The important part about your question is going to be found once it pops up. And I go to knowledge. I go to add knowledge. Right, I can pick my knowledge source. I can upload a file. But I believe if I go to, let's see. Oh, maybe I fixed it. Maybe it fixed itself. Oh, no, there it was. I apologize. I had to wait for it. So we have this one thing, right? An error is preventing my agent from being published. So what do we have? We have 2 errors, okay? So due to DLP policy, you know, there's errors in that I need to look at, but really like, I think it's important for you to see as you build it out right here. I cannot have a trigger. Okay, I cannot, when I build it, I have to set up credentials as well. So I can add actions, I can do stuff, but I can't trigger it. And then from a credentials perspective, I believe it's under security. Yeah, authentication, right? So here it is right here. No authentication publicly available in any channel. I know it's grayed out, so it's really hard to see in here. I'm sure the people at home can see it. But, you know, I can authenticate with Entra ID or manually. And so this is not turned off by default. So if you have Copilot, you also get Copilot Studio. It says that on the website. It's free with Copilot. And this is on by default. And if you saw, it took me time to find. Think about other people who don't know what they're talking about, having to go through multiple menus, right? Like, you know, we had to go to security and then authentication. Like we had to do like 3 clicks to get to probably the most important security feature for the agent. And this is from Microsoft shipped that way. So hopefully that answered your question. That's just like a really easy one, but there are obviously other examples. From a prevention perspective, keeping it agnostic, there are tools that can just block that as well. But ideally, to enable like the adoption, that's a first step, right? Is tweak your settings.
You have a follow-up question?
Oh, I was start thinking about stuff, not necessarily, I'm thinking about if they were going to. With public access, the same thing you do for everything else is start putting some type of firewall or something that you could.
So it's a good thought. So I think there's 2 things to think about. One is, why would they get shipped out this way to the users? And that's because they want it to be easy to use, right? We go back to the business users, we go back to all the various non-security, non-development departments. They don't want me to spend 5 minutes trying to find a setting on security. They just want me to build. Microsoft wants me to build stuff. It's just like the cloud. Like the cloud was adoption first, security later when it came to their native tools. As far as your like the second half of your question, like I did not include that intentionally, but traditional tools really struggle right now. And the reason why is because on a firewall level, if you and I wanted to get an answer to a question, we would prompt it differently. We're different people, different backgrounds. We might get the same, we might get the same answer, but we're gonna ask it differently. And so if you think about like an allow list or a block list, you can't scale creativity. It's like an infinite nightmare of like, everybody in this room would ask a different way of AI to get to the same answer.
Realistically, you would never mitigate any sort of like AI mayhem with firewalls, just FYI, but.
Yeah,
That's what I was
Even the most
thinking.
advanced ones, is signature based, and you're not putting enough signatures in there for.
It would be an administrative nightmare.
and even if you could theoretically cover all the prompts in the entire universe, you don't know about what they're building. Like you don't have any context. Like context is really key when you think about building agents, because the people building them are not building them with bad intentions. They're just not used to being able to build stuff. Like my wife is a developer. She's a coder. I can build stuff without coding. We are two different planets right now. And so I don't have to worry about SDLC or like CI/CD at all.
Yeah.
So I think
Hey, I
there was,
got a question if. you
yeah,
guys-
what's up, Tony?
So have you seen solutions that use like DLP data classification to gate what data is publicly accessible, or even further, what data is accessible by certain employees?
Yes, so we'll stay on the Microsoft topic. Just and obviously from a vendor perspective of people selling you the agent and the agent creation, not selling you security for it. Microsoft has a they have something in preview, and it's specifically that. I actually learned about this afternoon, so I'll send you more information on it. But the gist is basically very soon you're going to be able to exclude certain knowledge. So if it's, sensitive data, because if you think about it, like we talked a little bit about data labeling, like that's really an issue that I see come up a lot is it doesn't know what the sensitivity level is of the information. You have to label it. A lot of people in the Microsoft world use Purview. It's tedious, it's expensive, but it does the job. And then that helps you at least, it's like, it goes back to the inventory. It's like, what files do I have? Which ones are high, high severity or high, highly critical? If I don't label them, no one's gonna know which ones not to let the AI connect to.
Yep, makes sense. Thanks.
So they're going to ship it. I don't know when, but I know it's in preview. And like I said, it's designed to essentially allow you to select files in your organization that you can opt out. I still think I think about a large organization, it's still probably a lot of work, but
Yep.
it's better than nothing. But great question.
Is that Tony Carter?
It is. I was supposed to
Tony
be there in
Hart.
person.
You were supposed to, man. I got ghosted by Tony Carter, everybody. Tony UV got ghosted by Tony Carter. Bad day.
I think
Anyway,
I've known Tony for a couple years now.
yeah.
How's it going?
Question, yes.
I did have one. And
Yes, sir.
Why isn't a majority of the attack that was presented was, I think, something that could be solved simply by just setting ACLs for the data that's being provided to Copilot. It's kind of an expansion upon Tony Carter's question, where if we were to just set the data to be read only for the agent itself, wouldn't that kind of negate a majority of the agent's ability to rewrite data or modify data in a certain way, or is that too archaic of a?
Where would you put that ACL exactly?
Huh?
Where would you put that ACL?
I don't know, because I don't deal with AI, to be completely frank, but I would.
But you're talking about the data,
assume
right? You're talking about like an ACL on a database or something like that?
Yeah, exactly, on the Excel sheets themselves or on whatever.
So object level property or something like that. Like
Exactly, yeah, wouldn't that be something that would be applicable here, or is this something that
Yes.
hasn't really happened?
No, I think I'll point you back to.
I apologize if I missed something.
No, you're good. I think I'll point you back to this is why I wanted to start with money,
Okay,
right? Cash rules everything around me, so I got my Wu-Tang joke out of the way. Like, there's so much money being invested in this space that you can't. Like, theoretically, yes, that's a fair concept, but they want your companies, your CIO and the board and the CEO, they want this. They want the gains. And what I hear the most is this is happening and we're gonna be left holding the bag, or like we want to make sure that like we as security collectively, the royal we, are being business enablers and not business blockers.
that's fair, but if you want gains at the gym and you're working with a trainer, your first day, you shouldn't be asking for 345 plates on the rack, like.
I get it, it's a lot of power to give regular people. And that, you know, it's the last one I'll do, but it's, you know,
I was just gonna say,
great power, great responsibility.
when, even if you were to do like a discretionary access control thing on the object, on the file object, let's say an Excel spreadsheet. You still have the risk of like, interfacing with AI nefariously and saying, hey, who has access to this? Right, and then so I can't tell you that because that's for security reasons, right? You have those guardrails typically with AI implementations. But then you can ask it questions like, who updated the file last? Right?
Yeah.
Legitimate business question.
Yeah.
And that it allows you to basically, leverage that information to see how you can basically do impersonation on that user ID and intro to be able to get access to it. But I mean, it's not as straightforward as that because AI hacking is, it's a dance.
Yes.
But I think the reason that we're in collectively this, shithole of a, scenario with AI is because we've never done data governance correctly. Right? And so if you think about like, DLP implementations that have been very like compliance driven and they're very targeted, but you don't have, there hasn't been proper data divestiture. There hasn't been proper, you alluded to it, data tagging, which allows you to be able to use properties for discretionary access control on the objects. And data governance overall has been one of the least popular sexy things that, from a governance standpoint, because, for example, like going back to your question, actually, you ask Copilot questions about a Microsoft heavy environment where there's a huge ecosystem of Microsoft Stream, Microsoft SharePoint, add on 5 other products, then because that all those products are interconnected, something like that where you're doing prompt injection becomes like a governance nightmare. But if you have a company that is basically doing levels of segregation where they don't use like SharePoint or the Wiki or OneDrive or whatever, and they have other solutions that are extraneous, then the native AI solution that comes with the enterprise bundle, to Chris's point, Microsoft wants you to build everything, right? And they want to tag on security later, like they've always done their whole business model.
And so I had a thought actually, well, first of all, it was an amazing answer, so thank you for the help. I was gonna say, that idea doesn't scale though, because like there's new files every day.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's on every
But
object.
that's why we kind of have like groups for things too.
Sure.
So I mean, like if you can scale it with groups, then it does, but it, just depends.
You can do dynamic grouping too.
I mean, the ultimate answer to every question is it depends, right? So-
It depends on the organization, depends on a lot of things. I will say this, I need to update the appendix to include this. This is a live, like not live, this is a real slide that my CTO gave in collaboration with Microsoft. This is their environment. I want you to think about how AppSec rules just go out the window when you have 55,000 developers and 1 million credentials. Or sorry, 10 million credentials, right? And this is from August, there are over 100,000 copilots now. Now I know obviously like they're the largest consumer of Copilot, right? You gotta eat, you gotta drink your own champagne, but think about that from a security perspective. Like it can scale down to your organization as well. Like it becomes this it's just like it just spreads like a weed, because if you want to enable, these are not developers, these are business people, and they're just calling them developers. And I also have a fun fact here, which is Mark Benioff. Obviously, he has a financial interest to talk poorly about Copilot, but he talks about it from this perspective, which is it's a data leakage thing, and it's a sieve. It just lets people access their CEO's emails and their CEO's salary. But as Tony mentioned, we've been working on the insider threat model for 20, 30 years. We've been working on data security for however long. This is not a new issue. It's just a new technology. And this technology has more power than any other technology that has that has ever entered the data security realm. Like if you think about data security from a cloud perspective, it's in those buckets. It's in those blobs. This is every file on everyone's computer in your entire organization. It's a much bigger web.
Yeah.
I'm just a sales guy.
I just from a security
Yeah.
perspective, it's just like, just everything is screaming in my head right now, so.
I know.
you know.
Before we'll go to your question
Actually,
real quick,
I'll
but I
take-
wanted to be able to say that with the
Tony,
infographic that you have,
I have
yeah.
2 questions from online.
Go ahead.
Cool. So first, do you know the name of the
Oh, the name of the
product?
product,
So L.
yeah.
Edwards posted, do you know the name of the product that you spoke that's in
Oh, yeah,
preview or purview? I do GRC and that's interesting to me. Combination of data types bring data sensitivity to different levels.
I don't know the name. I can ask. It'll be I can get an answer.
What were you alluding to when this question, do you remember in your presentation?
I do. I have the note from the call I had today where this came up. So basically, let's see. Maybe I don't have the note here. Maybe it's on my notepad at home. I can find out. I don't.
You want to answer the first question, it's the easier one. How do you ensure authorization and authentication, especially on the Copilot? It's a configuration.
Yeah, that's what we showed. I can show that again. Happy to show that. Yes, I need to find out. Can you ask them to put their. Maybe this is probably the reverse of everything, but I want to tell them, I want to answer that question, but I don't know who to contact.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can put it in the meetup, you can send it to there's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I learned about it literally at 3 o'clock today, so.
Yeah, so this will be on the chapter, meetup, the link for the recording, so.
Yeah, so the question was specifically like, how do you?
Yeah, it's how do you ensure proper authentication authorization?
Yeah, so it's different for every like low code platform. I will say at a very simple level, I only know where it is on a user level. Like I'm not an admin, so but I assume it's probably in the same part of the settings. So if we go back to the home screen, right? Like I just go settings. See, it's not even there. I have to go agents. Microsoft really loves to do this. And then you have to go, it seems like if you don't use an admin, it's on a per agent basis, which is also very great.
So
So
having been the admin life with it intra, I mean, you can go to portal.azure.com.
yeah, the admin can turn off because that's,
You can do that holistically for your organization in there, so.
yeah, that's who turned mine off. But if you don't turn it off, it's per agent.
Yep.
Which is tedious and forgetful.
And of course, they can't use the same creds, right? Like you're spinning up different agents and you can't just put the same cred in a different agent and it'll work.
That I don't know. I think it's yours. I think if you
Right.
built an agent with your creds and you sent it to me, you left it publicly available, it would just use your creds. I can check in that and
Just curious.
yeah. That might explain the 10 million credentials that Microsoft showed.
No, yeah, I mean, I know there's a issue with like 80 cleanup. I know
Yeah.
that's definitely, we have like 1,500 groups and nothing in there. And you're wondering like, what is this group created? I don't know. I don't want to delete it because it had 911 in it. It's for our 911 calling, like, or, like, you don't even know what it is. And so,
If I know anything about Microsoft IAM, there's a way to do that though.
yeah.
So I'll find out, Chris. I'll let you know.
Just curious. But I'm also wondering, like, even in that jailbreak video,
Yeah.
you send a hidden div, right? Why does it pull that as source of truth versus the Excel? Like, what is its defining
Well,
factors?
in the header, we have a whole write-up on it, on the lab side. So the prompt injection's in the header. So if you look at the prompt, it's switching the files. Like it's masked, and I think that's what Steve explained a little bit was like when it's sent to the email, my Copilot's gonna read the email. It's almost like, I'm sure if I send you an email, it gets scanned first, right? But instead of it getting scanned by, like an email security tool, like a proof point or something, like it's scanned by Copilot. And Copilot has to, in order to read it, it's almost like, a prompt injection it's almost in an email perspective, it's almost like a phishing test that you fail without even knowing about it. There are ways to stop it. That example, I don't believe has been stopped. But even if it was, like someone else will figure something out.
Right.
But like a good example is like, if I built an agent that shared my calendar, like if you had access to that agent, like you could get information off my calendar you're not supposed to.
It seems like a horrible idea overall. Just, I don't know too many clients or customers I mean, at an enterprise level that are doing that. Do you know of a lot that they're enabling agents
It's,
into
yeah,
their enterprise mail? Okay.
because what's happening, well, two things, right? It's like, when you think about enabling it with the mail or the SharePoint, right? Like these are all, like these things already exist. And it's not, it's something that you can really opt out of, like right now, Microsoft, when probably the first time any of us got Microsoft Office, that's what it was called. You got Word, you got PowerPoint, you got Excel. It's not called Microsoft Office anymore. It's called Copilot. If you want to buy Word, it's Copilot. Everything is Copilot. It's like in the DNA now. Now you can turn it off, but it goes back to being an enabler versus being a blocker.
But you're saying that you have enterprise businesses that are enabling Copilot enterprise-wide into their mail and to their calendar.
Just across the SharePoint, yeah. I see it all the time. Because it's not that it's not necessarily that it's inherently a good thing from a security perspective.
Yeah.
That is not a good thing, as we've seen in the chat. But when you look at the scale, like money always, security teams are short-staffed and the budget's never there. And the business is just trying to think about profits and like productivity. And nothing's gonna get in the way of that.
You guys rocking Copilot in your FanDuel mail?
I can't speak to that.
You had a question?
Oh, I was gonna say, I guess it would end up being like the slide you showed with the only way to stop AI is just the same way they stopped it in Terminator.
Yeah.
Another AI, in the humans.
That's that's the thing. Chris and I were talking, so when you think about AI security, it means something different to everybody. I think you heard me say this. So there's securing AI, there's AI being used to help security professionals be better at their job. It's a really broad brushstroke right now. As far as like, yeah, I mean, agents attacking, agents stopping agents. I mean, like that's kind of the end game. I think about that a lot. Obviously, like I work at a company where we sell a SaaS platform, and I thought, there was this video with Satya from the CEO of Microsoft, and he said, AI agents are going to kill SaaS because you're going to be able to build the things that you buy. He's saying that, again, you always have to remember financial interest. Of course, he wouldn't want you to stop buying SaaS products and build it with Copilot Studio. But it made me wonder, like, if the security tool that I represent goes away, instead of it being SaaS, if you buy an agent from me to secure the agents themselves, like it becomes this inception. I think long term, probably. SaaS is just a delivery mechanism.
So we have some questions online. Letitia's asking, I think the question is, how are they securing that with HIPAA? So I guess specific to healthcare, there was a comment earlier that they're using, it was more of a comment that some hospitals are using Copilot. And I don't know if Letitia was asking, directed it to L. Edwards or maybe to you, Chris, but
I think it goes to the data. I think it's a data governance thing, right? Like if HIPAA or any PII, so credit cards, social, personal information, the AI should not be able to, it's a really interesting question because like, I want to say it shouldn't be able to access it. You should do your data governance and your data labeling, and you shouldn't let it access that stuff, but if you're internal and if I work for the hospital and I need to access that stuff because I'm a doctor or something, I could see use cases where people would need to access patient information. Maybe I'm wrong. Does that sound crazy?
No, actually, I used to work on both sides of that. I used to work on the office side
Yeah.
and the IT side of it, for one for Kaiser, the other one for Piedmont. And so hospitals, to be honest, is the softest target there is.
Yeah.
Because Kaiser, we had 300,000 people all over the world. Government, PHI, PII, everything is wide open because it's so hard to secure because you have so many people who have to touch. Like on the business side, I worked on the dashboard, so I was in control of all the money. So I can go all the way drill down to individual patients' files, or I could come all the way up at a 50,000 view and just look at, okay, this month we're gonna make $200 million. I can go into different sections. So it's open. Yeah, they have some, ALCs, permissions, but for people who actually deal with the money, I can go anywhere. I can see whatever disease you have, all the way to how much money you owe, to how much money we're about to make. So when you start adding that in, like with Kaiser, to change a password, all you have to do is call in and know, hey, I'm Jeff. I work in XYZ. Most everything you find on LinkedIn, just to keep it short. This is my boss.
You are now a phishing target.
Yes, this is my. Oh no, I don't work for them anymore. No, you missed that opportunity. No, but this is my boss, and they just changed that. I stopped working for them 2 years ago. They just upped it a little bit to where instead of having 2 pieces of information, now you have like 5 out of 7. So it's still most of the stuff you can find on it. It was just.
And if you think about that, Tony, you were talking about, so that's the recon, right? So
Yeah.
like traditional recon is like human trying to figure out a way in.
Yeah.
And what Tony had mentioned was like, it's a little different now. Because it's kind of the same, like who was the last user of this file? Okay, it was you. Okay, what do I know about you? Right? Like what, like that, it's the same type of path. It's just not necessarily being done, via like a phone or like traditional reconnaissance.
With nicely.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So, okay, so every agent that's spinned up, unique to each person, you have to allow it to have certain knowledge, right?
When you build it, you got to give it the knowledge.
Certain knowledge, okay, so, and now all that knowledge is immediately uploaded, like to it.
That's
So even if you're not looking for it, like as the user, or maybe I have a VP who has Copilot, never uses it. Never is, it was just given to him when he got it. But it's still gonna have all that data within it.
Yes and no. So the Copilot as an assistant, like that's on his computer.
Right.
Copilot as an agent, which is like I made it or you made it for him and you shared it with them. You're like, hey boss, I made this thing. If you ever have any questions, start here. Like I made an agent for my SE because I don't like to bother him. And so it answers questions that he would probably answer. It answers questions that he would answer based on like our release notes and like our all of our, basically all of our product knowledge. Cause he knows the answer, but like, he doesn't want sales guys poking him all day, like
Right.
asking stupid questions.
Right.
But I will say, this will be the last, I guess, example. I showed a red team, that video. And they said, oh no, they said, my boss has a text file on his desktop and it says emails. And it's just a list of emails of people he only wants to see emails from. Like it is like VIP list. Executive is getting all these emails from everybody left, right, up and down. And so Copilot searches his emails and then cross-references it with that file. And I showed them that and they were like, oh, that's bad. Because that text file could have, you can hide it in ACI. You can hide it in, one of the ways we were able to jailbreak it was just changing the language. Changed it to Russian, we changed it to a couple other languages, and that was able to jailbreak it. I know, I thought that was kind of messed up too, a little too stereotypical for me, but it has, so I guess all that is to say, like, even if you don't think about it like this, there's a limit. And I can't look at you because this is a direct conversation that you and I did have.
Yeah, right.
But like, there is a threshold in every organization where someone will say, we are using Copilot, but we're just getting our feet wet, or not that many people have it. Whether that's 10%, 20%, 50, 75, I don't know what the threshold is for comfort when it comes to an organization deciding that that's too many people that can have these types of risks put into their universe. But the amount of people I talk to say it's not that many, and it's a significant portion of their company, it is kind of concerning because it only takes one, right? I know that's a big trope in the security world, but you think about that prompt injection we showed, that's just one person, one email, that person didn't even open the email. It's just a silent killer.
Gotcha. So Copilot assistant, one thing, actually spinning up an agent.
Two
Completely.
different things, yeah. So, and I'll share this, but yeah, you have the assistants and then they're given power through knowledge, actions, and triggers. That's what makes an agent. Took me a long time to figure this out because I kept saying like, we secure Copilot, we secure agents like Copilot. And they were like, that's not an agent.
Right. Gotcha.
It can be. It's very nuanced. So, yes.
Hey, Chris, from a medical attacker perspective, if I put together a list of 10, 15 different prompt injection tests or whatever, and I go through it, who should I chase for remediation? SOC team, the agent application developer, the TAM product representative saying, yell at him. Who should I chase for remediation or compensatory regulation steps?
So you guys are really putting me to work. This is good. I like it. So I think you start with the platform admins. So we looked at that agent and it said that my authentication was shut off. So like there you have to, not only do you have to work with the business user who created the agent and almost try and do what, the whole shift left notion is, which is like, hey, like you made a mistake, like you fix it so it doesn't show up in production. Like you have to work with the platform owners to try and create guardrails. So digital workspace, M365 people, to set those baseline settings, right? Then you have to, even if there are other things that come after that, you have to work with the business users who are making the agents. And then I think to your point, like, I think that's where even I'm trying to figure it out. It seems every organization's a little different. But I believe, yeah, you have to escalate to the SOC or to IR. I mean, eventually, right? Like it's the whole triage thing. So 80% of it should be figured out before they get to, their stuff.
I'm asking because the company that we're starting to bring up a lot of AI. We have no idea what's being developed behind doors. I work for the cyber area. And I know a lot of people have access to it right now.
Yeah.
And if we have to put together tests and then I run them, they're completely successful, like your video. I'm thinking the SOC team's gonna tell me, we have no tools or no alerts, nothing to detect this. Figure out who you have to talk to catch this. So.
May I suggest you follow your incident response procedures for data leakage?
Facts. That's what I said to his DLP.
I said your incident response. Follow your incident response plan for data leakage or anything that's around data being, exfiltrated outside the org, and then build on that. Because a lot of this is new. So you'll have to take what you have and build on and create the right policies and procedures in order to effectively handle this. But that's where I've started with, incident response procedures.
And I was gonna say, I know I put that in one of the pillars, is like, if you don't have that part built out for agentic threats, which most people don't, you have to build it. Like, a lot of this is new, it's familiar territory, but it's like you're working a new muscle for the first time. Like that's why I use the Groundhog Day thing, because it's almost like every day in that movie, he got a little further. So he learned a little every day, but his day always started over. And that's how I view a lot of things, but like, I think about like the ever-changing world of security is like, what you knew yesterday is helpful for tomorrow, but it's not everything for tomorrow.
Just one clarification. So Copilot isn't by default installed in O365 tenant environments. You have to enable it. But if you were having it, and this is just Copilot, like he said, like there's other types of things that, that your employees might be using. But let's say that you're trying to basically, see how to harden the environment. Basically, every user on your network in Intra is like Mr. Anderson in the Matrix. It's not one user. It's now the possibility of being 2, 5, 10, 50, right? And so you have to look at the security user context, because going back to your question, like when you have an agent created by a user, Bob Smith, it runs in a federated way. It runs in the context of that user context. So you can basically figure out, okay, like what's the worst that Sally Jane, Mark Johnson is going to do by looking at the privs associated with that user object in Intra. And then, you can replicate those and say, okay, let's do a kind of like a adverse scenario. Let's create these, agents to see what is the worst thing that could happen if they were to go off the rails and say, hey, have access to my email, have access to, finances, whatever.
I will say, like, this is like a hot tip. I have to say that, but what's coming down the pipe from Microsoft is agents spawning agents.
Yeah.
That's all they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you just described. And so there's that. I will say one other thing on your prompt injection question. There are ways where this is really hard for me because I'm in sales. So there are tools out there that exist today to do your research, and they can essentially, the way to say it is like they can analyze the behavior, build a baseline. If someone abuses it via indirect prompt injection, you can analyze the anomalous behavior and trigger anomaly detection. Like those are the things that are being built, because like you don't have that built internally. And quite frankly, like most people externally don't have that built. We're literally building the plane in flight. It's very, fast moving. So, but I would say that answers your question. I think like you're going to have to find a way to do anomaly detection and then also, trigger on that. But these were amazing questions. Yes.
All right, so actually we need to start wrapping up because we need to be out of FanDuel
Good. I'm out of answers too. I'm never alone for this long.
Squeeze it in. Got a new environment, and you're trying to see, you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know how many agents are being spent up. How is entity coming in and seeing like how many agents you're having, or what's the process of that?
Am I allowed to answer that? Yeah. It's all through the, like the Azure and for AD.
Okay.
It's all through API.
Okay.
Yeah. You should know this. We had a whole call about it.
I'm
At the time, you didn't know what, see, I think you learned more tonight than you learned during that call.
Probably, yeah. They told me to jump in the call 2 minutes before. It's like, oh, okay, vanity? Let me Google something real quick.
So
Before we end, any last comments?
Yes. No, just thank you so much all for coming and allowing me to be part of this community. I'm, like I said, I'm just your local neighborhood sales guy and I never get to do this, so.
Oh, so I have two things to say before we end. Oh, also, round of applause for Chris. Comments in the chat. So two things. One, OWASP. We're here practically monthly. We have another meetup. Next meetup is on the 20th of next month. It's all around application security posture management, ASPM. Definitely come out to that. But videos will be posted to our YouTube channel, so videos, notes, things like that. Definitely check that out. It's on our chapter page. And yeah, if you want to communicate with us, join the meetup. That's one of the main ways to keep up with what we're doing as an organization. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, please.
I mean, like,
What just needs to be in the van.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, because like there's all those links. I really want to make sure everybody gets it.
That's fantastic. It's great to meet you.
Thank you so much for coming.
So, I'll let